Hi, and welcome back. This is Barsi, your host, and it has been just over a year since we last talked, and I'm really happy to say that I'm back. So I've taken a year off just once before, early on, when I was just creating Be Bold Begin. I was also starting my podcast production business, and I needed time and energy to focus on building that business. And this break that I'm coming back from is very similar. So as you know, if you're a returning Be Bold Begin listener, I took the majority of 2024 off. I'm recording this now in the early part of December of 2024. And I took that time off to really focus on some new things. And one of those new things was, once again, to launch sort of a new business. And the business is called bossgoddess.co. And you can go to that website. It's boss-goddess.co if you wanted to check it out. I still have Avant House Media. That's the podcast production agency that I created 7 years ago. But bossgoddess.co has been on my heart to create for a very long time. But I wasn't exactly sure how it was all going to come together, or how I wanted to present it, or what I really wanted it to be, how I wanted it to exist in the world. So that's what I was really dedicating some time to figuring out. And I'm really excited to share that with you. And because it's finally launched, the website's available, and it has, there's actually one mini audio course that you can take already. There's a masterclass there that's free that you can take. It's on demand, so you can watch it right away if you'd like to. And that will really give you a sense of what I've been creating and how it all works together, and sort of the methodology that goes along with it. And there'll be more things to come, and I'm excited about all of it. So my return to the podcast is part of that, and I have something to announce today as well, actually, which I'll get to shortly. But I'll link to the website in the show notes. But again, if you want to tab over while you're listening, it's just boss-goddess.co. And again, what you'll find there are resources. And what I'm focusing on is a couple of things. One is to begin to attune to your truest self and align to your truest self in order to experience more fulfillment in life and business, if you have a business. And I also call this attuning and aligning with your highest self and honoring your inner goddess. I truly believe that when we honor our inner selves, when we honor our truest self, our highest self, our inner goddess, if you will, we start to express from that place once we give ourselves permission to do so, right? When we start attuning to who we really are, that means we start embodying who we really are, and we start expressing in those ways, and our actions then start to reorganize, to reflect who we really are. And when we can experience that, that is truly when we start to feel more in our bodies, in our truth, the fulfillment is now more common. It's more easy to experience that. It's more joy, more ease, more flow, more creativity. Like, it all starts to come together. But the attunement is really the first step. And there's a lot of awareness and permission and sort of blocks that can come up during that process. So we're going to spend time talking about that. But that is what I've been spending time creating, as sort of a pathway to do that. So the other big piece of news that I have for you today is that this podcast, Be Bold Begin, will be rebranding to be called Boss Goddess, so that we can kind of have this conversation in an ongoing way. So in the coming weeks, you'll see the artwork change and the name, but you won't have to resubscribe or do anything different to access the podcast. So I thought this would be the easiest way to sort of continue the conversation to where it has evolved to, and where I'm at now, and what I'm offering, and what I'm wanting to teach and to share. and it's what I've been working on, and it's really changed my life. So if I can do it, the first thing I ever want to do is share it and help others do that too. So that's kind of what this is all about. So anyway, if you're not subscribed yet to the podcast, meaning you haven't added this podcast to your library yet, or maybe you've removed it because we were on a break, that little tiny plus sign, if you're an Apple Podcast user, the Apple Podcast app, there's a little plus sign at the top of the podcast, or the follow button in Spotify or other podcast apps. Usually it's a follow button. I encourage you to click that so that you don't miss the first official episode of Boss Goddess or any other new episodes that will be coming out, because we are back. There'll be a little bit of space between this announcement and when we have our first official episodes coming out. And I plan to create a trailer to kind of reintroduce us to this new evolution of where we are in the conversation in being bold and beginning. And we're really kind of zooming in on sort of this topic of fulfillment and attuning to who we really are and becoming our highest selves, and sort of allowing that to align across all of the things that we do and create and experience. And when we do that, it really has a lovely organic unfolding that occurs, and it really sort of melts into this beautiful process and practice that just becomes a more enriching daily life. And it really changes how we create. It really changes how we start to build things like our business. Maybe we're ready for that next chapter turn. Maybe we're ready for something new to do, and we know that the old ways are just not sitting right anymore. And what I mean by old ways is like the formulas that we've been following, or the sort of outcome-oriented transactional ways of approaching success, which is one of my favorite topics, because being an entrepreneur, it's very success focused. But the idea of starting a business, right, comes with all of this desire for freedom, yet it very quickly can become just a new cage, right? We were just in a box again. And there's so many formulas out there, and so many how-tos, and so many ways that you're supposed to do it. And, I've been in business now for 7 years, and not only that, I've grown from a freelancer to an agency, and that journey is interesting, but I'm heart-led, and I'm always value first. And that can be hard to do in media, which is the type of agency I have. It's a podcast production agency. And then create formulas that are true to who I am and true to how I want the creatives creating with me within my business as employees, but also those that come to create a podcast, those who come to share their message. And there's a lot of structures out there that can really stifle what we're trying to do in the first place, which is create something unique, create something that is magnetizing, create something that is true and authentic. So I've been observing that process from every angle, being a creator, being in a business, being the owner of a business, watching other creators create, watching others who don't identify as creative try to create, and wanting to hit all of those marks, but yet we get stuck when we are told that, well, you can't do it that way, or when we're made to feel wrong about something that might feel a little different than what everyone else is doing, but that's a good thing. So how do we start to rewrite the rules so that they are still going to serve us and take us along a path that is going to get us to where we want to go with anything, whether it be a project, a business, something creative, a message, our daily lives, whatever that is. I want to start having a conversation really focused around how to allow ourselves to be our wisest guide, meaning you are the wisest guide for you. And that will always be true, but it's very easy to look for that externally, and society teaches us to look for that externally. So here, we're going to have a lot of conversations about how to attune to ourselves and then how to align our actions to that attunement. And that is what I want Boss Goddess to be. I went on a little bit of a tangent there, but coming back to what I wanted to share with you today, which is a little bit of the journey of why I'm doing it this way. So when I launched Be Bold Begin in 2018, it was primarily to share small actionable tips and tools from my Kaizen Muse creativity coaching practice to help creatives get out of their own way, to be bold and begin, right? So that's where the name came from. And it was, I was really excited about everything I had just learned. And they were so easy to do, meaning the steps, the tools that I was learning were just so applicable in so many ways. I wanted to share it with you as much as possible. And so podcast made perfect sense to do it that way. And it was really about how to take steps to start or to keep going. And then I took 2019 off to start I'd already started the agency, but to really focus on it. And then in 2020, as the pandemic was taking shape, I felt this strong desire to create a healing and safe space. So I brought the podcast back, and it felt like the right place to do it. And I created episodes like How to Feel Okay During a Shitty Time. That was episode 25. And I'll link to these in the show notes if you're curious and want to hear these and they feel resonant to you. So How to Feel Okay During a Shitty Time, episode 25. I created a guided meditation called How to Find Calm During Overwhelm. That was episode 24. And then another one, which I still love. I love all of these, but this one I really love because it's called Letting Go with Gratitude. And that's episode 29. And I guess this resonates with me a lot now, or still, I should say, because with this attunement, the self-attunement process that I'll be talking about in future episodes, a big part of that is the detunement as well, and letting go of things with grace, with gratitude, because they served you well at one point. But as we grow and evolve, the old actions, the old things in our lives also need to change with us. And that often means letting go of some stuff that we may have not realized were no longer serving us. So episode 29, Letting Go with Gratitude. I also started at this time to bring on guests for the first time. And I really enjoyed having those conversations with other creatives or well-being thought leaders. That's kind of like the type of person I started bringing on. And I really started to learn from them. And that was a really great experience for me. And there's more to that. So the first part of 2021, I started to share on authenticity and how we can share our message through projects like podcasting in ways that feel in honor of who we are rather than formulaic or outcome-based sort of fleeting. Outcomes are fleeting, meaning they happen in a moment and then the outcome is over. So there's this very formulaic, outcome-based stuff in the podcast world especially, but I really wanted to create formulas that felt in honor of who we are and build strong and unique foundations by deepening into our truth and our organic flow as we create something like it's a long-form content practice or process, which is what podcasting is. And that led me to talk about business as well. So that's really where this conversation kind of started for me, was again, like evaluating how it was going for like how to help guide someone along a path of long form creation that just happens week over week. I mean, what a process to be in. It's kind of never ending. So in order to stay really connected and inspired to our topic, to our conversation that we want to have, it requires authenticity. It requires us to feel, really inspired ourselves. And in order to inspire others and to help others, we have to really buy into what we're saying. And if we're more focused on, how to achieve a certain type of success because someone told us we should have a podcast, for example, or, it's supposed to plug into our marketing system in this very like formulaic way, it can do all of those things. But if we're not building that authentic voice and allowing the medium to have to leverage the magic that it embodies, which is truly different than any other medium. It's why I love it. It really provides a platform for deep engagement and relationships to feel really deepened, and for conversations to feel really authentic, for lack of a better word. But through my observation of going through those processes with client after client and week over week, that's kind of where I really started to observe this, like a disconnect around how it's supposed to be done. And authenticity is talked about a lot in the podcasting space, but then how do we actually achieve that week over week? So that was where I was really wanting to build formulas and processes to do this, just for my clients, but then it really kind of started to infiltrate my life too. And actually, this is what happened. So first half of 2021, if you look at the episodes there, lots of podcast episodes about the process, because it is a creative process. But then something really interesting happened. In the second half of 2021, I joined this service called Podmatch. It was new at the time, and I'll link to that in the show notes as well if you're interested in guesting on shows, or if you have a podcast and you want to, and you're looking for guests. This is what it does. That's the service. So I was a host looking for guests, and I started to receive inquiries from several like spiritually awakened guests who had these like big transformational moments in their lives, these things that just sort of changed their lives. And like I said, I just did at the time like 9 months worth of podcast and sort of business focused episodes, which to me are also creative episodes because of the way I was talking about this topic. So I really had no idea why these particular guests kind of all at once felt really drawn to my show, but their requests were very intentional, and they all had something in common. Like I said, they had this very distinct turning point to share, meaning they each had a kind of awakening or discovery that changed their life. And that was interesting to me, that there was such a consistent trend across this group of guests. But I remember feeling very intrigued, yet scared, meaning I didn't think they fit the format of the show. And that made me curious. Like, why was this happening? And why did I feel so strongly about it? So I challenged myself to record a few of them anyway. And I released one or two. And then I kind of waited before I released more, because it started to feel maybe almost even too woo-woo, like too edgy in the spiritual, on the spiritual side of things. It felt kind of skewed to me, and I wasn't sure if that was on brand for the podcast. And I noticed it kind of made me a little uncomfortable, which I was surprised by. So it raised an awareness in myself that I didn't realize how taboo I felt about some of these things, or at least talking about them in public and sharing them with you. And I personally felt like, I don't know how I feel about it. And that was it. That was my sign to explore this, because I'm sure I've talked about this on a podcast before, but when something scares you in that way, where it's not really based on anything that makes a lot of sense, and you weren't really aware of it, and yet you're putting something into this category that is truly just making you a little uncomfortable or a little squirmy, then it's worth exploring. Then it's worth asking the question, why do I feel that way? And oftentimes that is because there's something inside of us, something inside of me that was wanting to be expressed. And I kind of recognized that. So I wanted to go on the journey and sort of discover more, and then make a decision about how I feel about it later. And it's because it really was a kind of a limiting belief. And when I have that kind of a limiting belief where it stirs something in me like that, then it's usually about me. It's usually something that is maybe lying a little dormant and wants to wake up. So I went for it. And you'll see that towards the end of 2021 and beginning of 2022, you'll see the conversation kind of shift in this way. And then I started to magnetize more of this type of guest. And the conversation I was having with myself about alignment and spirituality and business started to shift. So I started to have my own awakening through my learnings and my conversations with these guests. And then Be Bold Begins format had transformed. It shifted into sharing the stories of those who had a pivotal moment in their lives that changed everything. And it gave me a brand new format. And I just allowed it to flow. I allowed it to organically evolve into this new conversation. And something I wasn't going to mention, but I just remembered, the downloads went up. You seemed to really have liked those conversations, because I don't know if it was the titles or there's something about this conversation that was interesting to everyone in a new way. And that was really like affirming that I should keep going. And I fell in love. I fell in love with this kind of format and the stories. And these guests were so beautiful. They just had these lovely journeys to share that were real and shifting, and it really opened up my eyes to what was possible, and it started to change my life. So for one, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to them, and I'm so grateful to you for showing me that you do enjoy that kind of conversation and that we can talk about it. It allowed me to really allow a part of myself to unfold in a really big way. And secondly, I started to be able to embrace that part of myself, and that felt really magical and deeply connected to the parts of myself that I wanted to connect to more. And I share all of that with you, not to go on this long-winded journey of what the show has been, more so to share that the evolution has been present since the beginning, and it's had a few iterations already. And what I've created now is a direct relationship to that last evolution, and it allowed me to create Boss Goddess and the teachings and the offerings and the formulas that I was able to design that are now called the Intuitive Creators Method. And you can read about that on the website. There's a whole page about what that means and what that is. And it all came from opening up to what was being presented to me. And it kind of started on this podcast. So I'm extremely grateful for that. And it truly is magical when we can allow ourselves to be a part of what is showing up for us, like to not ignore it, but to face it and to question it and to be curious and to notice and to allow it to kind of unfold and to trust yourself that you'll know what to do. And that was just a really cool experience. So here we are to do a little bit more of that in a very intentional way. And it's truly what led me back here to be with you again and to realign this conversation with where the evolution has taken me and how I believe I can now best serve you once again. And I needed to take that break to really be intentional when I came back. And I'll see you then. Till next time.